Let's talk now. There's Robert Bates, the Research Director of the Centre for Migration Control. We've got the French, very good morning to you, Robert. We've got the French Interior Minister saying that the reason why people are dying in the Channel is all our fault. I agree with him. You know, he basically says people are coming to this country because they know that they'll be able to stay and they'll be able to live here.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, Mike. I think what's happened is the British establishment have almost been coaxed into this false sense of security that somehow the French and the Europeans are going to help us with our own problems. Yeah. Now, these are countries that are facing their own illegal migration crises, and if they're able to have a semblance of that problem palmed off onto the British, then it's in their interest for that to continue doing so. We can send hundreds of millions to the French, but the fact of the matter is that there's a huge coastline there, and the real problem ultimately isn't the people smugglers. The people smugglers will always find a way to transport these people to Britain. The simple fact of the matter is that unless you stop these huge flows of migrants and persuade them that it's not worth travelling across to Britain, then they are going to keep coming. And we can't do that so long as we remain a member of the ECHR, so long as we remain a signatory of the Refugee Convention, because those things both disbar us from pushing back people in the English Channel, and it also disbars us from deporting those that do manage to sneak onto our territory illegally. So this is completely in our own gift to give to ourselves to end this crisis, and we can, try these notions of collaboration all we like, but they simply won't work, and they simply won't bring an end to this absolutely huge problem.
No, exactly right. And there's a very interesting story today in the Telegraph, which really illustrates how bad the system is at checking the identification of certain people. This, you will remember, refers to an Afghan refugee by the name of Lawangin Abdul Rahimzi. He came to this country illegally in the back of a lorry, effectively, pretending to be 14 years of age when he was actually an awful lot older. He was actually an adult. He's currently serving time in prison for stabbing to death Tom Roberts, a young man down in Bournemouth, right? He had a record for previously shooting 2 migrants with a Kalashnikov in Serbia while he was travelling to the UK. He told Border Force officials he was 14 when he was actually 19. He claimed he was fleeing the Taliban when he wasn't. He was put in a secondary school in Dorset before getting expelled for carrying a knife. He was spotted harassing women. He put a picture of himself up on social media holding a knife. I mean, there's a whole catalogue of things that could have been sorted out and sort of stopped him from becoming a risk to others. He was actually examined, his teeth were examined, and he was found to be older than 14, but nothing was done about it. But a coroner in Dorset has said that there's no need for the Home Office to be investigated at an inquest because there's not any evidence of systemic failure. I mean, what's wrong with them?
Well, I'm actually very impressed that we're able to get this much information about the chap, because, of course, tens of thousands of these people coming across, we have no papers on, we have no real record, we have no means through which to contact their countries of origin and to find out what kind of crimes may have been committed. I mean, I recently unearthed the story, the Centre for Migration Control recently unearthed the story that there's actually migrants up in schools in Lancashire that are being allowed to go and meet primary school children without a hint of a DBS check actually being conducted. So the idea that we've managed to discover the background of one of these chaps suggests, that there's a certain collaboration gone on there with Europol, but the fact of the matter is that tens of thousands of these chaps we know nothing about, apart from the fact that they are arriving from countries with very different cultural norms to ours, very different attitudes to women. We're also seeing, the violence in northern France as well, in these camps and amongst these migrants that are waiting to make the crossing as well. And that should be sending a very clear message to us that these are people that, apart from the huge costs that it actually inflicts on us to put them up in houses, that there's a real societal and cultural risk as well accompanying these people as they come across. The Labour government, again, we're hearing nothing really on the crisis that we've unearthed that's been unfolding in the last couple of days, and I think the problem is just going to continue indefinitely. Really, at this point, I don't really see where the breakthrough in the political discourse comes from at this point.
No, I don't either. And you don't really hear Keir Starmer or anybody else, including Yvette Cooper, talking much about it. They kind of avoid the immigration conversation altogether. They talk an awful lot about all the things that they're doing to fix Britain and fixing the foundations. Well, surely the one foundation that they should be fixing is the border control.
Well, exactly. I mean, you don't have a functioning country if you can't control your own borders. But rather than actually address that and have a bit of level-headed realpolitik in the issue. They are completely enamoured with these liberal notions of, the Refugee Convention, the ECHR, international reputation. Well, I'd argue that our international reputation has actually taken quite a bit of a hit since the Labour government have taken control. You've got people across the world looking at the clampdown over the recent unrest and people being imprisoned for social media posts, and they're laughing at us.
Right.
And then you've also obviously got, let's not forget, the Labour government have recently turned their backs on one of our most important allies in the Middle East, in Israel as well. And so this idea that, the Labour Party are there and they're the grown-ups back in charge and they're the ones that are going to put us back in a positive light on the international stage is absolutely laughable.
Yeah, it is entirely. And just to put the icing on the cake for you, let's have a look at Tony Blair, who's now finally worked out that maybe it wasn't such a brilliant idea to introduce massive migration into this country.
And by the way, if you do end up trying to do this, as what we've done with Brexit, what's the result? We've now got higher levels of immigration than ever before, and we've swapped out usually single people coming from Europe, as I say, to work in things like the hospitality sector, for families from Asia and Africa. I mean, how has this helped us? So
I guess you didn't see that coming.
Well, this is the last thing the debate really needs, is Tony Blair throwing his 2 pence in. Let's not forget that he is the dealer that effectively got Britain hooked on mass migration in the first place. When he took control, net migration was about 50,000. When he left office, it was about 270,000. And this is the chap that has, presided over the accession of the A8 countries having unfettered access for Britain as soon as they join the EU. He was the chap that scrapped the primary purpose rule. So he's really the architect of the problem that we are currently seeing. It was obviously been compounded by 14 years of the Conservative government, but Tony Blair is well and truly the chief architect of this crisis.
Yeah, he absolutely is. It's shocking, absolutely shocking. And Robert, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Robert Bates, their Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control.